and welcome to the Men on the Path to Love podcast, the Why Self-Awareness is More Attractive Than Confidence episode. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. I coach men who are rebuilding their lives and relationships after breakup or divorce, helping them understand their relationship patterns, grow into the best version of themselves, and create deeper love and real connection, showing up differently for the next chapter of their lives so they can live the life they love. Now, as I continue my series on how to become the man capable of a healthy relationship, I'm going to talk about something that can completely change your relationships, your dating life, and honestly, the way you see yourself. Why self-awareness is more attractive than confidence. Now, don't get me wrong. Confidence can absolutely be attractive, right? Yeah, man, a confident man may walk into a room with certainty, charisma, swagger, and presence. Confidence can help you approach someone, or maybe speak up when you need to, take initiative, and just going for what you want. But self-awareness, that's different. Self-awareness is the ability to honestly see yourself, to recognize your patterns, your wounds, how you impact others, your blind spots, your strengths, and your growth edges. And confidence without self-awareness can become arrogance, defensiveness, all that ego and lack of accountability. But confidence with self-awareness, that creates emotional safety. It shows maturity and authenticity and trust. And in healthy relationships, trust will always matter more than that swag. When I look back at my own life, group therapy was really the beginning of my self-awareness journey. Before that, I thought I was pretty self-aware, but what I discovered was there's a huge difference between thinking you know yourself and being willing to hear how other people actually experience you. Group therapy changed that for me. And I gotta say, man, there's something very powerful about sitting in a room with other people who are all trying to grow, heal, and tell the truth. And in this room, I started receiving real-time feedback from others in the group. And honestly, some of it was hard to hear. I mean, really hard. I remember one particular time, someone gave me some honest feedback, and I got so angry and hurt that I stormed out of the room. I didn't want to hear it. I felt exposed, I felt misunderstood, and I got defensive. But eventually, I came back into the room and processed what had happened. And that moment became incredibly important for my growth. Because the beauty of group therapy was that no matter what feedback I received, there was always someone else in the group who could support me or relate to me or help me process it. And that made feedback feel safe. Now, that didn't mean every piece of feedback was completely true. Not all feedback is accurate. But what I learned to do was look for even a grain of truth. And over time, something shifted. I actually began to want feedback. Yeah, man, I desired it because I saw how much it helped me grow and build self-awareness. And self-awareness became a game changer in my relationships. In fact, one of the things my wife noticed early on when we met was my willingness to look at myself honestly, communicate openly, and be accountable. And I truly believe part of what has kept our relationship strong for the past 17 years, not being perfect, not always getting it right, but being willing to reflect, communicate, repair, and grow. And that matters. And part of my role as a coach is to give honest, constructive feedback and do it in a kind and compassionate way. Not in a shaming drill sergeant kind of way, but being real and direct while also helping someone have compassion and grace for themselves for what they didn't know, for what they didn't understand, or what they were conditioned into. Because growth happens best when truth and compassion work together. That reminds me of a client I worked with years ago, and I'll call him Paul. Not his real name, of course. Paul was referred to me at the clinic where I work. He was a good-looking guy. He dressed sharp, had style, confidence, and a little swag when he walked into a room. And he even described himself as a ladies' man. And honestly, confidence wasn't his issue. No, man. The problem was he couldn't keep a relationship longer than about 6 months. And most of them lasted even less. And he told me, he said, "Bill, I have no problem getting women. I'm confident about that. But these short relationships are getting old." And I remember thinking, this guy's ripe for coaching. So I asked him why he thought his relationships didn't last. And he was like, when they start complaining. And I asked him if he thought any of the complaints were valid. And right away he said, "Oh man, it was mostly bullshit." Now, instead of arguing with him, I first just supported him emotionally. And then I gently pushed back. And I asked him, "Paul, was it all bullshit?" And that's when he paused. And I could actually see him thinking, like the wheels were turning in his head. And he admitted to me, he said, "You know what? I do hear some of those same things a lot." And then I asked him to tell me more. He said that the women would often tell him that he didn't listen, that he always got defensive, that he only thought about himself, and then he quickly added, "Nah, that's just bullshit." That's when I took a risk. And I said to him, "What if I told you I've experienced you the same way with me?" And man, he looked shocked. He immediately got defensive and said, "What? No, I don't." And I calmly pointed out to him that he had just gotten defensive. And then I explained what I had observed of him. I told him that sometimes when I would say something important to him, he would quickly change the subject. And later on, when I brought it up again, he'd say that he forgot. And I told him that that can feel like he wasn't listening. I also shared that when I asked him what he thought his partners might have been feeling emotionally, a lot of the times he had no clue. That came across as being, self-centered, self-focused. And at this point, I could see him getting really tense and agitated, right? And I really emphasized this. I told him that it wasn't his fault and that he was doing the best he could with what he knew and how he was conditioned. And I meant that. Because when you shame somebody, it just shuts people down. And compassion helps people open up. So I shared with him that I also used to struggle with feedback. And I told him by learning how to receive it, it changed my relationships and my life. And slowly, I could see him start to soften. And then I let him know the good news. I told him that, you can learn self-awareness, and it starts with being willing and continue to grow. So I joked with him and said, "Look, Paul, you already have your swag, man. You've got the confidence. Now, self-awareness is going to be your superpower if you want to attract a relationship that actually lasts." And at that point, he was all in. Now, here's why self-awareness is more attractive than confidence. Because confidence may attract attention, but self-awareness builds connection. A self-aware man can apologize sincerely. He can recognize when he gets defensive. He can listen without making everything about himself. He can reflect and respond instead of react, and he can grow. And that creates emotional safety. And most healthy women aren't looking for a perfect man. No, they're looking for a man who is emotionally honest, accountable, teachable, and aware enough to grow through challenges instead of blaming everyone else. That's attractive. So you may be wondering, how do I become more self-aware to be more attractive? Well, I've come up with 6 ways. The first one is, and I've said it before, is learn to receive feedback. Now, again, understand that not all feedback is accurate. But instead of rejecting it right away, ask yourself, is there even a small grain of truth here? Because that question alone can change your life. The second one is to pay attention to your repeated patterns. If you're getting feedback from multiple people telling you the same thing over and over again, well, it's probably worth exploring. They're telling you something. There's something going on here, and it's worth looking into. The third thing I'm going to suggest is to slow down your defensiveness. Yeah, man, defensiveness is a real turnoff. And what it usually means is that you're protecting yourself from shame or fear or some sort of insecurity. So when you feel defensive, slow down, man. Pause and ask yourself, what am I trying to protect right now? And even if you don't know, slow down and hold on to your defensiveness. The fourth thing I'm going to mention is to self-reflect on a regular basis. Something I do every single day, and I've been doing this for the longest, and it really does help, and that's journaling. When you journal, it helps you to get out thoughts that are swimming around in your head, and you can reflect on what you're thinking. I mentioned therapy can help, group therapy, coaching can help, and trusted friendships can help. It's asking yourself, how do other people experience me? What impact do I have on others? And what patterns keep showing up in my relationship? When you can ask yourself those questions and answer them honestly, you're on your way, man. And that's a powerful way to help you grow, to create that self-awareness. Number 5 is to become curious instead of certain, being a know-it-all. Yeah, self-awareness grows through curiosity, not through proving that you're right. When you're finding yourself just trying to be right instead of connecting, then that whole self-awareness has gone out the window. And finally, number 6, and that is to practice accountability and do it with compassion. You can acknowledge these unhealthy patterns that you may have without beating yourself up. Remember, growth isn't about becoming perfect. It's just about becoming conscious. And when you become more conscious, more self-aware, you become more capable of love and long-lasting relationships. And if you're rebuilding after breakup or divorce, or you're struggling with self-awareness and want some support, please visit my website, menonthepathtolove.com. You can check out the resources I have there for you, podcast episodes, and learn more about coaching opportunities. Look, man, you don't have to do this alone. Just go to menonthepathtolove.com and get some support. All right, and that brings us to my quote of the week, and it comes from best-selling author Mark Manson. He breaks it down simply. He says, quote, "Confidence is believing in yourself. Self-awareness is knowing yourself," unquote. Yeah, and there's a big difference between the two. Confidence may help you walk into that room, approach someone or make a great first impression. But self-awareness is what helps you sustain connection, move through conflict, be accountable, and grow in relationships. Because when you truly know yourself, your patterns, your wounds, your triggers, your strengths, and your impact on others, you become safer to love. And that kind of awareness, that is really attractive. Okay? And that will bring an end to this episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast, the Why Self-Awareness is More Attractive Than Confidence episode. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. Thanks for listening. Now, coming up on the next episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast, as I continue my series on how to become the man capable of a healthy relationship, I've got a few questions for you. Have you ever confused getting attention with connection? Have you ever thought someone wanting you, texting you, or validating you meant they were emotionally available or truly connected to you? A lot of men spend years chasing attention and validation without realizing why they still feel emotionally disconnected in relationships. So here's the bigger question I want you to think about. Are you looking for real connection or just relief from loneliness, insecurity, or the need to feel wanted? Give that some thought, and please join me for the hidden difference between attention, validation, and real connection episode. And if you liked what you heard in this episode and know someone who needs to hear it, then please share the link and share the love. And until next time, keep your heart open and stay on the path to love.